Anyways, our title tonight is When Life Stinks. So have you ever had something built up so big that you were, when you get it or when you finally were able to do it, that your experience was just a huge letdown, a huge disappointment? I'm trying to get situated, sorry. So have you ever gone to a movie expecting this phenomenal blockbuster movie to be amazing and the whole experience to be awesome because the hype that surrounded the whole movie was just incredible and big, and then you watch the movie and you're like, how in the world do I get those couple of hours of my life back that I just lost because it was a waste? Have you ever felt like a person let you down, like hardcore let you down? You trusted them, you believed in them, but when push comes to shove, they let you down. Have you ever counted on God for something really big and you felt like he didn't come through for you? You felt like he didn't act very godlike in your estimation. Have you ever been disappointed? Have you ever felt the moment when you were just like, you know what, life stinks? Disappointments happen, and sometimes, yes, life does seem to just stink sometimes. Proverbs 15:13 says, "A joyful heart makes a cheerful face, but when the heart is sad, the spirit is broken." King David was known as the man after God's own heart, right? Even he experienced some moments when life seemed to really stink. Listen to his prayer in Psalms 39, verses 12 and 13. It says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Do not be silent at my tears, for I feel like a stranger to you. Look away from me, that I may smile again before I depart and am no more." Disappointments often come from expectations, more specifically, wrong expectations. So one wrong expectation that we can have oftentimes is expecting man to be God. I'm not saying to be like God, because we should all strive to be more like God. But when we expect man to be God, we have wrong expectations set up, right? So we all have heroes in our life. We all have people that we look up to and that we respect. And it's easy for us to slowly and even unconsciously or subconsciously expect people to act like God in our life. We don't say it. We don't really think it subconscious or consciously, but it is what's happening in our life. We put them on a pedestal, right? We put them on a high horse. We put them at a place where God belongs, and that's it. And when people don't come through for us, deep disappointment can pierce our hearts, right? A lot of people get salty at today's church, not because God failed them, but because people failed them. The problem isn't that man has failed you. The problem is that you expected man to consistently act like God. People don't expect others to be perfect unless we put them into the spiritual or the church category, right? And you always expect the church people, the Christians, those people to be nice and perfect, and we put them in this category on their own, right? Then our expectations can run super high for these people, but we have to remember that they are still people. We are still people. We sometimes fall short. As your leader, I can never become your source of life, but I can point you to the source of life, and that's Jesus. When you confuse your expectations, you'll always end up disappointed. Secondly, we get disappointed when we have the wrong expectations of God. Peter had wrong expectations about Jesus. We see this in Matthew 16, verses 21 through 23. I'm going to read that for you real quick. It is right here. It says, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. 'Never, Lord,' he said, 'this shall never happen to you.' Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." You see, Christ's followers wanted Jesus to rise up to power on earth, but Jesus told them that he must be crucified. Peter pulled Jesus aside and said, "That's not how it's going to work out, Jesus." But Jesus called Peter out and he said, "Get behind me, Satan." He rebuked Peter. Peter and the disciples had wrong expectations of Jesus. They expected Jesus to establish himself as the Messiah and overthrow the Roman government. But God had a different plan. Their expectations were unfulfilled, so that they became disappointed with Jesus. Wrong expectations of God are often the breeding ground of spiritual disaster. Once you feel like God has disappointed you, you probably, let's be honest, probably because God's plan wasn't your plan. Okay, so when we feel like God has disappointed us, it's easy to think that he might not really care about our life and what's going on in it. We're usually more interested in God buying into our plans rather than us buying into God's plans. The result in that, we get disappointed every single time. Hands down, no doubts. Always disappointed. Third thing is another way that we get disappointed is when our hope is misplaced. When our hope is misplaced, we eventually become hopeless. Put your hope in yourself and your abilities, and you will eventually find yourself coming up short and lacking and messing up, right? Put your hope in others, even great people, and they will eventually be less than perfect and let you down. Put your hope in a relationship. You may end up with a broken heart, very hurt from that. Put your hope in a dream or a goal, and you may find that the dream maybe isn't as amazing as it was in your head or in your mind or as we thought. When hope is misplaced, it becomes hopelessness. So where do we place our hope if we want to survive life's disappointments? Because we are going to face disappointments in life, am I right? So the Psalms has a running theme. Let's read a few of them. Psalms 42:5 says, "Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation." Psalm 42:11 says, "Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me?" Sound familiar? Yeah. Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. Psalm 43:5, "Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God." Psalm 147:11, "But the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him, in those who hope in his steadfast love." Psalm 42:5, "Why are you in despair, O my soul? And why have you become disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him for the help of his presence." So what do we do with our disappointments? Well, first off, we let God be God and we let man be man. So in other words, stay in your lane, right? Have you ever been driving on the road and somebody starts to creep over in your lane and they're coming in where they don't belong? Stay in your lane, right? Let God be God and man be man. Much of life's problems come down to putting God and ourselves in the wrong seats, so to speak, right? You're sitting where God's supposed to be and God is sitting where you're supposed to be. We do that. God doesn't do that. Don't get that twisted. So don't put man on God's throne and don't put God in man's chair. Secondly, don't expect to understand everything this side of heaven. Isaiah 55:8 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declare the Lord." The New Living Translation says it like this: "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine." So we need to remember that there are things that we will never understand this side of heaven, but when we are in the presence of God, then we will know things. Thirdly, find meaning in the madness. Learn to define your pain instead of letting your pain define you. Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. It doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work together for good. It means we're going to go through some bad things. We're going to have to suffer sometimes, right? But those things working all together will come together for good for those who love the Lord. To give definition to your pain, or your pain will define you. Fourthly, when the dark tunnels come, stay on the train. Corrie ten Boom said, when the scenery outside is bright and beautiful and the ride is smooth, it is never tough to trust the conductor of the train. But when you go through the dark tunnels and the train's pathway seems twisted and you can't see where you're going, that's the most important time to stay on the train and trust the conductor. The only time you don't come through to the other side of those dark tunnels is when you jump off the train. So maybe we should shift our focus from God fulfilling our expectations to us fulfilling God's expectations. What are God's primary expectations for us? Trust and obedience. That's what he asks of us. Lastly, find healing in worship. Psalms 42:5, we read it earlier, says, why are you in despair, O my soul, and why have you become disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him for the help of his presence. This verse reminds us that our hope isn't found in the answer. Our hope is found in his presence. As we close, I challenge you this week to play the song. It's called Just Be, and it's by Kim Walker-Smith. I'll post a link to it in the comments or something of this video. But I want you to turn everything else off. Turn your TV off, turn your computer off, put your phone down, whatever it is going on in your life, and just shut the door. Go into the bathroom if you have to. Try and get away from everything. Go into your closet, whatever it may be, but get away from everybody and play the song and just sit in God's presence and spend some time with him. Maybe even put the song on repeat. But I promise you that God has answers for you when you sit in his presence. Our hope is found in his presence. I know that you may be dealing with some disappointments in your life. They're never fun. Sometimes life does stink and we don't have the answers for why we have to walk through these things. But sit in God's presence and put your hope in him, not the things around you, not in people, not in yourself, not in situations. Put your hope in God.